Hey everyone, Brendan Snyder here. How are you? Thank you so much for joining me and welcome to a special review for the brand new Smashing Pumpkins album Atum, a rock opera in 3 acts. It just came out on Friday, May 5th of 2023. It is their 12th studio album and a triple album at that was released in 3 parts digitally, but with that full release coming out on May 5th that I mentioned. We're going to dive into this whole thing here in just a bit, do an unboxing and all that great stuff. But before we get started, if you're new to my channel and you haven't already hit the subscribe button, please do. Also leave a comment, hit like, all those things help support my channel. I'd greatly appreciate it. And of course, as an added bonus, by subscribing, you'll be able to stay up to date on really cool videos just like this with a review for the brand new Smashing Pumpkins album, Atum. So I want to jump back a little bit here and give you some history. The band itself formed in 1988, but really broke through on their second LP, Siamese Dream, which came out in 1993. First major label album for the band itself. It would go on and sell 4 million copies alone in the US. Their next album, though, Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness from 1995, was even bigger, selling 5 million copies, but actually being certified for sales of 10 million because it was a double album, so each sale counts as 2. The band did follow it up with 3 more albums: Adore in 1998, Machina, The Machines of God in 2000, as well as the sequel to that, Machina 2, The Friends and Enemies of Modern Music, which also came out in 2000. That was an internet-only release, and the band called it quits thereafter in 2000, but they would reform in 2007, although it would only be frontman Billy Corgan and drummer Jimmy Chamberlin from the original lineup. The band would release 3 albums together, and would be several lineup changes before Billy reformed the original lineup of the group, minus bassist Darcy, who didn't want to be involved in it. And since that time, the band has released 2 albums, Shiny and Oh So Bright in 2018 and Seer in 2020. That was attempting to be a modern album, but it was also heavily rooted in the 80s with synth pop and so forth. But now that brings us to the album we want to talk about, which is Atum, a rock opera in 3 acts. As I said, just came out on May 5th of 2023. 12th studio album for them, a triple album and concept album. Each album features 11 songs on it, 33 tracks total, although there are 10 additional tracks included on the LP box set. But those additional tracks are on 5 7-inch singles, and that's actually making up the album, which is the shelved Shiny and Oh So Bright Volume 3. I do hope that eventually gets a standalone release. I'm kind of bummed it's only on the LP and was not part of the CD package. Atum was originally released digitally at 3 different times. Act 1 came out first on November 15th of 2022, Act 2 on January 31st of 2023, with Act 3 coming out on May 5th of 2023, which is also the physical edition of it, and why we're doing the review of this now. Billy Corgan said the reason he released it like that digitally over the internet in the 3 broken down album versions of this is just so that fans could be able to digest this more easily in small amounts. I actually opted to wait to listen to this whole thing until I got it, and I have to say that even though I waited, I was still able to digest this thing very easily because all 3 of the albums are good in my opinion. Now, according to Billy Corgan, this is a sequel that completes the trilogy of albums that started with Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness in 1995 and Machina, The Machines of God in 2000, and it continues the storyline of Zero and Glass, with the character now being much older, known as Shiny. As far as the album is itself, though, still very much rooted in the 80s synth pop sound like Seer, their album from 2020. But the guitars and the more acoustic instrumentation has returned to this one that was sort of seemingly absent on the last album. And the thing that album sounded kind of all of one type, we get into the much more varied style back onto this album here. This album is filled with a lot of variety on it. We've got songs that have a sparse feeling, more acoustic direction to it, atmospheric. They do have electronic elements, and some of these are synth laden. We've got pop elements, we've got rockers, we've got the grungy tinge songs and so forth. But all in all, a lot of great variety in this that holds my attention far more than last album, Sear from 2020. Thing is, you know, I think that this is the best album that the Pumpkins have done of their reunion eras, either one from either the 2007 reunion or the one that the latest reunion era of 2018. Now, I don't think this album comes close to Melancholy, but it is still a very good album. Biggest complaint on the last album that I heard was just the lack of natural or acoustic drumming from drummer Jimmy Chamberlin. Well, that has returned here, so if you were missing out on those drum sounds, it's back on this album. Some real standout tracks that are on this album that I want to touch on here from Disc 1, Track 3, The Good and Goodbye. This one here, first rocker of the album, heralding a return of the heaviness. This is what's been lacking from some of the past several albums that the band has released, and I think we are finally back at getting one of the core elements that make up the Smashing Pumpkins. Also, Disc 1, Track 9, Beyond the Veil, another rocker with a great beat on this one, melding together that newer and older style perfectly. We move on to Disc 2 in the package here, Track 2, Empires. This one's a grungy rocker that's got a very atmospheric feel to it that I like a lot. Disc 2, Track 7, Every Morning. This one here is a beautiful song, or at least it starts off very beautiful and sparse before the tempo picks up on about 2 minutes into it, and then it's just a very uplifting song throughout. Also, Disc 2, Track 8, The Grays, a poppy up-tempo tune with some synth drumming in here, still giving us that core feel from Sear, but at the same time, there's a really nice driving feeling behind it. Disc 2, Track 9, Beguiled. This was the first single off of it and sort of heralded the return of that heavy rock sound. It is a heavy rocker and just a really great representation of the album. If you like that song, that's the only one you've heard, I think you will actually like the rest of this album. Disc 3, Track 2, That Which Animates the Spirit, is a cool theatrical rocker with a great, interesting rhythm to it. And then we move into the next one on Disc 3, Track 7, Harmageddon, a driving rhythmic rocker that chugs along nicely. And the last one I want to touch on here, also from Disc 3, Track 10, Spellbinding. This one was the second single off of the album. It's a beautiful song that mixes the synth pop and rock nicely together. It creates a very uplifting song. And I think it's a great way to draw down the album as it does before we get to the actual last track, which is a much more atmospheric affair called Of Wings. So let's take a look at this. As I said, this is the physical format. It was released individually, each album or act, digitally. It comes like this with a slip, a slip sleeve, I guess, over it. Just stating the band's name, none of the song lyrics on that, but when you slide it off, you get the album cover itself, Autumn, and then underneath it, it says it's the rock opera in 3 acts, very small. And Smashing Pumpkins is very small. I think that's why they decided to add this to it, to make sure people knew what it was. But when you remove that, you do get all of the track listings. But the thing I don't like about this is that when it gets to the end of track 11, it starts up with track 12 and so forth, as opposed to 1 through 11, 1 through 11, and 1 through 11, 33 tracks total on here. I guess they just wanted you to know you're getting 33 songs. This thing is a digipack, and it opens up with some cool graphics that are on it like this. And then when you do that, you get the 3 individual albums. And so one of the things I liked about this was just, as I mentioned at the beginning, where Sear was a double album on 1 disc, this one here is a triple album, but on 3 discs. And I think that is much better. There is a booklet in this. Let me pull that out, and we will take a quick peek at that. It's got some more cool graphics on it, just continuing along with what the storyline is and so forth. No photos or anything. It just goes through song lyrics and stuff like that. It's got, you know, run through on who plays on what. It's got these photos, but, you know, they're graphically done in a way, so you're not really seeing the band. You're just seeing some cool art, in my opinion, with the 4 guys of the band. But I would have loved just some band photos and things, recording studio, that sort of stuff. But there you go. That's what the booklet is, at least. And so bottom line on this album, I just think it's a great return to form album. It's been a long time since we've heard something like this from the band Smashing Pumpkins. You know, one of the greatest bands out of the 90s, in my opinion, from the alternative rock and grunge movements and so forth. But you know, we're considering that this is actually part of supposedly the trilogy of albums that is Melancholy, Machina, and then this one here. I do think this one has a lot of those characters with it. It can stand up with it, but what's really great is it definitely stands up on its own. So regardless of whether you're thinking that it's going to be that or it has to be that or whatever, the album definitely stands on its own 2 feet. And then on top of that, each of the 3 albums, the 3 discs themselves, I felt stood up as an independent album on its own. One of the things with Melancholy is that I felt that that album tended to roll off flat towards the end. This one here keeps it up all the way through. Again, not saying it's better than Melancholy, just saying that this one I can put on any of the 3 discs, and I really enjoy this album. It holds my attention all the way through, which is saying a lot for a triple album of 33 tracks. I think if you're a current fan of Smashing Pumpkins, or you were a fan in the past of Smashing Pumpkins and lost touch with them, this is the time to return. It is a great album and definitely worth checking out. All right, everyone, hopefully you enjoyed this review of the brand new Smashing Pumpkins 12th studio album, Atum, a rock opera in 3 acts. Let me know your thoughts on this. I hope everyone has a great day, and I'll talk to you all real soon. Bye-bye, everyone.